This is Brother Teacher. I don't know if I have an adequate title for this video as of yet. It'll be whatever you see it as in your search here. But anyway, I just want to touch for a moment on protecting who you are and your image and your reputation as it relates to people who try to befriend you or who seem to be friends, but in fact they're actually seeking to get something from you, when that is you are a person, a man or woman of worth. That's not an indictment against the world, but let it be understood by all that's watching me right now that everyone in the world are not kind by nature. Everyone that you meet and interact with in your circle and even outside your circle don't intend you good, even when it appears on the outside as though they are genuine, but in actuality they have an agenda. However subtle it may be, an agenda still. I'm saying this to you. For example, in my life over the years, I've noticed people who admire me, and I don't claim to be God's greatest gift to the earth, but I do know that I provide value on some level and even many levels. And there are people who try to associate with you as they have with myself, and seemingly they are polite, kind, and genuine, as I pointed out earlier, but really they're quietly jealous of you because they don't like the fact that you have something that they don't have. And we can't get inside of their minds and figure out all of the inner workings and the things that brought them to this point in their lives. I'm talking about adults right now, but this is systemic. This is something that came from when they were children and they grew up with this mindset and or mentality. It's a sense of lack. I don't have this. I never was afforded this particular opportunity in life, and I see this man that has a little bit more than me. Doesn't have to be a whole lot, just a little bit more than me, and I notice how people are attracted to him or her, depending on the situation. But in this case, me, people attracted to me because of my kindness, because of my generosity, philanthropy even over the years, and the fact that I'm a giving person, and at the same time I have a lot of knowledge concerning certain things, and I'm still a student of life, as I always say. But with that said, these people look at me sort of at a distance, even though they're right in front of my face, smiling and say, how you doing today, and have conversations, and we may joke a little bit and even laugh. But inwardly, they're like a ravening wolf. They're trying to find you and dissect you so they can try to extract something from you that they can use later. Not only to benefit themselves, but also to even hurt you. It's a fact. Hurt you how, brother teacher? Like this. Their inadequacies in their own mind, or inability to do things, and maybe not having accomplished certain things in their own lives, they feel like they're very vulnerable. They won't allow you to know that, or me to know that. So they're trying to pick up anything that's remotely off kilter with you, or that's remotely criminal even with you, or remotely a flaw in you, and they're stocking it up inside so that perhaps maybe one day you'll say something to them in their minds, because they're on this defensive thing. They built this wall up to a degree. One day, if you were to ever have a conversation with them and make them feel slight or less than, if you were to, or I were to, make any statement like that, they go back into the annals of their mind and they pull this information out that they've extracted from observing you, trying to find some fault in you, and they would use that as a defense. for their own inabilities and or weaknesses. Am I clear? I've seen people do that. I've experienced people do that. It's a fact of life. And these people, ladies and gentlemen, who I'm talking about you, those of you that are genuine in your heart and in your endeavors. You got to make sure that you put your diligence cap on, that you put your discernment cap on, and that you're always paying attention. Not on edge, but you're simply paying attention, and that you're able to dissect this type of individual when they present themselves to you. Know what you're dealing with, in other words. Know what indeed you are dealing with, because these people are cancerous to us and can be. But if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, your own due diligence, and walking that straight and narrow path, you're always guarded. Stay in your lane and keep them in their own lane. But what you never do is lower yourself to their standards, which is no standard at all, really. Because they are like the crabs in the barrel. You've heard that analogy. The crabs in the barrel. There's a big barrel. There's a bunch of crabs. They're all the same. One crab sees the light at the top of the barrel. He's struggling to get out because he's curious about what's out there beyond where he's at. The rest of the crabs at the bottom don't want him to get out because they have everything in common amongst themselves. So they're going to pull you down so that you don't venture off into maybe success, because they would see you a different way. And they don't want you to have something that they don't have, but if you're there with them, then you have everything in common with them. And that's true for the example of a lot of alcoholics that you see in some challenged neighborhoods, some poor neighborhoods, and so forth. They hang together because they have something in common. But anytime one of them liberates themselves from the rest, and he begins to do better, maybe get a job and stop drinking and so forth, they say, look at him, who he think he is. Do you follow what I'm saying? These are the type of people that are around us. Could be a family member as well. So I just want you to try to protect yourselves so that you don't have to deal with a whole lot of extra stress in your life that's not necessary. So beware. I've had people tell me that I thought I was better than them over the years. I've never exuded that attitude, ever. I was just simply being me, period. I've heard people make statements to me or ask questions, why are you using such big words, when I was coming up? Should I lower my standards just because you won't up your own standards? No. And I learned that lesson the hard way. When I would speak in front of an audience, I would oftentimes use whatever words I use, and I would use a very common word right behind it to explain what I was saying, so that everyone from every walk of life that might be in my audience would comprehend or understand what I was saying. I wouldn't use collegiate words, if I was dealing with a bunch of people who didn't have very much education, in other words. You follow what I'm saying? And that's not saying that I'm the cream de la cream as far as some educated scholar, but I am who I am. But I've heard people say, and people have told me, what does that word mean? Why are you using that word? Well, why are you not? It's not that I'm better than you or trying to be better than you, but what are you to you? It's not complicated. So I'm encouraging you that are watching me, stand your ground, stay on your square, stay on the journey, continue to perfect that which is in your own life. And perfection is attainable, no matter what anyone has ever told you. No one's perfect. I heard that statement before, but it's funny, odd, that the scripture says in the New Testament, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which in heaven is perfect. He said, be perfect. If it's not possible for a human being to be perfect, then why would God tell you? Why would He urge you to be perfect? I mean, aren't we supposed to graduate from who we are today and be a better us tomorrow and next year and the next 10 years. So that is perfection. Perfection not necessarily in its fruition and completion. Perfection of the mind, because we have the thought and the heart and the mind to be perfect. We're not struggling to be perfect. We're just trying to do what we should do, which is the proper things to do, and walk circumspectly like today might be the last day of our lives, and trying to live the best life that we can possibly live each and every day. That is perfection. That is the mindset of perfection. I can do this. I will do this. I'm going to achieve this. Isn't that perfection? But what's imperfection? The person who does not apply themselves at all. That's what that is. So when people say no one's perfect, really, what are you trying to hide about yourself? What are you covering up? What is it that you don't want the world to know about you? Understand it and keep it in its proper context when you talk about perfection. Was Jesus, Yeshua, was he perfect? Yes, he was perfect. He gave us the example, not because he was God on earth, but he gave us the example that a human being can live without sin. A human being can live without committing adultery, without stealing, without killing, and so on and so forth. So he left his throne and he came down here on the planet in the person of a human being who we know as Jesus Christ or Yeshua the Messiah. He came down here to let us know that you can be a human being. I'm showing you, I'm being the example for you to let you know that you can be a human being and be without those particular faults that's associated with humanity. So you can be perfect. It doesn't mean, let me clarify, it doesn't mean that you won't commit a crime. It doesn't mean that you won't commit a sin. It doesn't mean that you won't bump your head and make mistakes and bad decisions. It doesn't mean that. But what it does mean is that you're striving to meet the prize. You're striving to do your best. And that in and of itself is perfection. This is Brother Teacher.